Hey everyone, it's Mr. Gilbert here, and it is Tuesday, June 2nd. Let's go ahead and let's talk about what we're going to do for writing today. So, last week, I believe it was Thursday, maybe it was Friday, with Mr. Scott, you read the article. It's called At the North Pole. It was by George Merrick, and you read all about this man called Admiral Robert E. Peary. So, let's start by looking at Admiral E. Peary. What a handsome photo of this gentleman right here in what is only, I mean, it's the probably the warmest jacket coat alive, to stay alive in the North Pole. I mean, look at that thing. Look at all the fur. It's ridiculous looking. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the prompt that we're going to answer today. Let me highlight it for you so that you can see it, and make sure you have a pencil or paper. We're going to do a box and bullet plan today. 3 points in our box and bullet plan. Describe Admiral Peary's visit to the North Pole. So we're going to read this 2-page article, and we're going to describe his visit to the North Pole. Let me scroll down to my plan because we're going to do the plan live while we do the actual writing. Make sure you have something to mark up the text as well, as we will be stopping periodically to describe Admiral Peary's visit to the North Pole. Let's go ahead and let's get started right now. It was a cold winter's day on the edge of the northern ice cap, not far from the home of Nagasaki. A group of men dressed in fur, there's our man, Mr. Peary, with two sledge, each drawn by a team of Eskimo dogs. I think I had a picture of this up, but I'm not sure if I still have it ready to go. No, I don't. Okay, I'll put it in tomorrow's writing for you. Loaded with cans of meat, condensed milk, biscuit, tea, sleeping bags, spare mittens, and boots of fur. There were axes, snowshoes, and instruments of different kind. Some for measuring the depth of water, if they should come to any open places of ice. There were also instruments used for determining how cold it was, and others for finding out when they had actually reached the most northern point of the earth. A tall man marching ahead with a serious face and a firm step, he was leading straight to the north where no human being had ever been before. I'm guessing that's probably Admiral Barry. He could not be sure that he and his brave companions would ever return. That was Admiral Robert E. Peary. Paragraph 4. Mr. Peary was an admiral in the United States Navy, but he had spent many years in these cold areas, and he loved the snow, the ice, and the freezing winds. This is what he says about them, and I quote paragraph 5. More than once I have come back from the great frozen spaces, battered and worn and confused, sometimes injured, telling myself that I had made my last journey there, but somehow it was never many months before the old restless feeling came over me. I began to long for the battles with ice and strong winds, the handful of odd but faithful Eskimos who had been my friends for years, the silence and the great white, lonely north, and back I went time after time until at last my dream of many years came true. Okay, so we read a lot there. I hope you appreciated my Admiral Harry voice. Um, Now all I can think of is Ice and Frozen, which I will be watching directly after this video with my daughter. Let's go and let's start to plan out our writing. So, describe Admiral Perry's visit. I think we kind of got a sense of that this is a dangerous mission, right? These explorers are going to the North Pole, which, if you haven't picked up from our writing, is uncharted territory and extremely cold. Go ahead and find some evidence to just kind of describe what we just talked about and stick it in that box and bullet plan as number one. Now, I didn't leave space here, but again, I'm going to go ahead and add that supporting detail to number one so that I can stretch my writing out. So go ahead and do that right now. I like this bit in paragraph 3 because it really describes the danger. So I'm going to write for my first box and bullet, um, exploring North Pole, very dangerous. We know it's dangerous. That was the whole purpose of this first part. Whoops. Oh no, I hate this little thing that it doesn't word. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add my supporting detail, and then I'm gonna actually put this in quotation marks. So I'm gonna quote, uh, he could not be sure that he and his brave companions would ever return. I like to put that in quotation marks because I think that's a really interesting piece of writing taken directly from Admiral Robert E. Perry, which we can then put in our writing to really add some meat to the writing to describe how dangerous this exploration was. Stop. Sorry, cat. Okay, let's go ahead and let's continue. We left off at paragraph 5. This is where a lot of the information is in paragraph 6 through, we'll call it 8 down here. So let's go ahead and let's continue reading. Admiral Perry's dream was to find the North Pole. He had many friends who wanted to help him make his dream come true. They built a ship for him called the Roosevelt in honor of the man who was then the president of the United States. In this, he had sailed from New York with the men who had selected to go with him. He had stopped along the way to take on board the Eskimos and the dogs that he needed. The Roosevelt had pushed its way far north as it could go, and now frozen fast in the ice at the edge of the ice cap. Sled dogs of food had to be carried from the ship and been buried in the snow where the Admiral Perry could find it on his way back from the North Pole. The strongest and most faithful dogs had been harnessed to 2 sleds. Last of all, the most trusted of his companions had been chosen to go with him. They had left behind the rest of the company, who were to stay with the Roosevelt until the return. Let's stop here at paragraph 6 and let's add another detail to describe the visit to the North Pole or the exploration to the North Pole. So I'll give you a second to find your evidence, and I'm going to highlight what I want to highlight. I want to put something in about the Roosevelt, the ship. So I'm going to say they built a ship for him called the Roosevelt. I'm going to highlight this bit right here. And I also want to put something in about sled dogs. That they had to use sled dogs to travel. So let's see. Sled dogs of food had been carried from the ship and buried in the snow, where the Admiral Perry could find his way back from the North Pole. The strongest, most people. Blah, 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 blah. I like this bit right here, so I'm going to highlight. Whoops. Oh, I did. That's the text feature. Oh, Mr. Gilbert. Okay, well, I'm not sure if I can undo that on the spot here. There we go. So now that I highlight that, I'm going to put something in my writing about, and I just dropped my mouse. Um, used a ship called Roosevelt and sled dogs to explore. Um, and then as my supporting detail, let's go ahead and talk about how dangerous this was. They had left behind the rest of the company. So let's just say 2 men set out to explore North. All right. Let's continue. Let's take a look at our last 2 paragraphs here, and we'll find our third and final detail. Remember, we're answering the question. We're describing Admiral Perry's visit to the North Pole. So we're going to describe then what he finds. So day after day, Admiral Perry and his 5 companions and his strong dogs traveled over the ice and snow. At last, you know what? Let's pause here because I thought it was 2 men. It's actually 5 men. So we want to make sure we correct that. Let's continue. At last, they did reach the North Pole. They were the first people to have been to the North Pole. What do you suppose they found there? Nada. Nothing but snow and ice stretching in all directions as far as they could see. There was nothing to show where the pole is, but he could tell by the instruments that he was very near where it must be. So the center of the Earth, the center, we have the North and the South Pole. There's not an actual physical pole there when Admiral Perry is visiting, but he can use instrumentation, compasses, his navigation expertise to then find where the actual pole of the Earth is. Let's go and let's add that final detail, and I'll give you a second to do that, and then I'll fill out mine. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at paragraph 7. I like this right here. I'm going to highlight this. At last, they did reach the North Pole. They were the first people to have found it. So let's put found North Pole, and then as a supporting detail, let's now describe it. Nothing but mittens. Stop. Mittens. Mittens. Stop. Sorry. Always a cat. Nothing but snow and ice. The cat is now scratching, so we have to say stop. I apologize for that. That is something that you've seen in every writing video. The cat is constantly with me. Okay, let's go ahead and let's take a look at what we planned out today. So our job today was to plan out Admiral Perry's visit to the North Pole. We talked about how the exploration is a dangerous exploration and how he even quoted he might never return with his colleagues on the dangerous mission to explore. And then our second detail, we went to say he used a ship called the Roosevelt to get there, and set out with 5 men to explore. They found nothing. All it was snow and ice. Okay, friends, that's all we have for today. Use our plan to stretch out our writing tomorrow. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out, and I can't wait to see your plans. Bye, everyone.